everyone, welcome to another episode of Empowerment Through Performing Arts. I'm Tiffany Britton, and today I'm here with Dr. Sarah Perry, who is a certified music therapist. Hi, thank you for being here today.
Good morning, thanks for having me.
Of course. So first off, can you start off by defining music therapy for us?
So in very general terms, music therapy is the use of music to reach non-musical goals. So it's a very patient or client-centered practice where we use music to help facilitate development in other areas. It could be working with mental health issues, it could be working with physical development for children who may be delayed, maybe working in hospital settings with someone who has a head injury, or even to work on social emotional issues. But generally you're working on non-musical goals through the medium of music.
That's interesting. So what sparked your interest in music therapy?
As a student, I was very active in music in general. I played the cello, I played a little piano, I sang in choirs, I played saxophone, I played oboe, and I was interested at the time in becoming a physical therapist, actually, and then just a friend, this was in high school, had recommended that I check out music therapy as a field, and the school where I studied cello, which I'm from Philadelphia, so it was called the Settlement Music School, happened to have a music therapist coming once a week. So I started shadowing her and just really found that it was a great way of working with children. I was very interested in working with children with special needs, is where it kind of turned, and then that's what I decided to major in and stayed with it.
So what was that process like, becoming a major and, graduating and everything? How many years did you have to study? Did you have to do anything specific to become certified?
Yeah. So music therapy training, there are 2 tracks for music therapy. Generally, the most common way is to go through an undergraduate music therapy program. There are some master's programs available, but it's a little bit different. It is a very tightly wound 4-year program, plus then an internship that's usually 9 months to a year long after you graduate from school. Music therapists also have to meet proficiencies in voice, guitar, and piano skills. So in addition to studying cello, I had to study voice, piano, and guitar. And then throughout those 4 years, you're also studying sciences, so that you're getting pre-med bio, anatomy, physiology, as well as psychology. And then by your senior year, you're going weekly, doing music therapy sessions individually with clients in different settings. So generally, throughout the 4 years, you get exposed to working with children, working in nursing homes, maybe working in mental health facilities to try to get you a well-rounded background. And then once you pass your board exams, you can become a board-certified music therapist. And then every 5 years, we must maintain our certification. So you have to either take the exam again, or you take continuing education credits toward renewing your certification every 5 years.
So what does a typical appointment or session look like?
There isn't really any one typical appointment or session, because music therapy can happen in so many different areas. So music therapists might work in a mental health hospital. Music therapists might work in a school. So for me, I worked in a pediatrics hospital. I worked at Milton Hershey Medical Center in the Children's Hospital there. That was my first gig as a music therapist. And so I worked in the cancer ward, a hem-onc ward for children, and I worked in pediatric rehabilitation. So most of my experience comes from working with children. So my typical session would start oftentimes with like routine greeting songs, hello songs, and then it depends on the goals that you're working on. So I had a lot of experience and great privilege to work with speech therapists and occupational therapists and physical therapists. So sometimes we would have a group session where we'd have myself and a speech therapist and occupational therapist, and we would have 3 or 4 patients, and we would I would understand what their speech and OT goals were, and I would design a whole music activity around their goals. So if I was working with children who needed to work on physical things, I would have more music activities that involved physical movement. Like maybe I would have stations of instruments, and we would do songs where they had to work on walking or getting themselves to different instruments to play. Maybe if they're working on fine motor skills, I would be working on activities that had fine motor. If I had a patient who had a head injury and was working on memory skills, we would do a lot of songwriting to help them sequence events and work on memory, like perhaps they had to work on goals for rehabilitation, and we would actually write a song about their goals to help them work on their memory. When I worked in cancer, a lot of my sessions might have been about songwriting with patients to work through the issues and challenges or just their feelings with music. But then sometimes music therapy could have been just giving a cello lesson. I can remember very clearly a little guy who was missing his cello classes at school because he had to come in for his chemotherapy treatments every week. And so he would bring his cello and we would have a cello lesson, and then eventually we ended up having a little recital in the rotunda for the nurses and the patients. So music therapy sessions really are going to vary based on your patient's needs.
What did you learn the most from your experiences as a music therapist?
Maybe things that we already know. Like music is inherently structured, and it can be very motivating. I learned, particularly from working with children, but even with working with adults, like in a nursing home or other settings, music is generally an enjoyable exercise. So when you can engage your patients or clients in something that they enjoy while trying to address their goals, they'll just stay with it longer. They'll participate more and have more positivity toward the whole process, which then usually allows you to work on your goals longer. So there are certain things like just learning that a child who might have been in a physical therapy session and be tired after 15 minutes of working with their physical therapist, but could do 45 minutes of music, shows just how powerful music is for helping to keep one engaged. I did my doctoral research on music and children with sensory processing disorder in particular. And some of the things that I learned from that was that some of the most engaging activities for children who have sensory integration issues was oftentimes singing. Singing can help to regulate breath, to work on their body. I learned that movement is really necessary for everyone. I know you talked with a dance therapist too, and I just find that engaging in movement really engages the brain, and since I work mostly with children, this is something that I think was really valuable.
Is there a particular moment in your career that you're most proud of?
I went from working in a hospital, which I have some really wonderful memories of knowing, like being told by a parent that when I came down the hall with my music cart was the first time their child got out of bed all day. Like that's a really powerful thing to know, that these kids who were in the hospital looked forward so much that was the only thing that got them even out of bed. And I think some moments is knowing that I have students that might not have, that music was such an important thing in their development that it really influenced their whole life. Like having a child who had autism who took music lessons with me eventually ended up being able, writing musicals that were featured in youth musical theater award sessions in New York City, and then she went on to NYU, and just knowing that by us working together with music, it opened up that whole world for her that had she not been a part of, I don't know what would have been. It was tapping into something that connected for her, that allowed her to connect to others, and those are really proud moments, I guess. So there's more than one. But
I love that story so much. Thank you for sharing. If a viewer was interested in either working with you specifically or maybe one of your colleagues, how would they be able to get in contact with you or possibly schedule an appointment?
My email, anyone in the music program, in the music ed program, is, you can find us on the Westminster Choir College page under faculty. And my email is very simply sperry@rider.edu, so I'm happy to meet with anyone.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your insight with us.
Thank you.
Of course, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of Empowerment Through Performing Arts. We'll see you next week.